Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Brian Kelly, the LSU Tigers, wasting absolutely no time getting active in the transfer portal, getting their top targets on campus in for visits. And you look over the next couple of days, it is a loaded visitor list for this LSU program. A lot of players I really like, but I think more importantly, you can tell Brian Kelly, this LSU staff, took a long look at the depth chart, the roster, and said, hey, where are the positions that are going to be concerns in 2025? How can we address them in the transfer portal? That's something that last year for LSU, I felt like they had some glaring position problems and just didn't really go out of their way to address it in the portal. I think this time around, there's a lot of intent to what players LSU wants to bring in. Fired up to get into this list. Before we do, as always, one to the LSU fans, thank you for the support. Y'all, a lot of y'all have been rocking with the boys 12 months ago when we were talking this LSU program in the portal. It's been a blast. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, it sounds like it's going to be a busy next couple of days and weeks for LSU, and we'll break down the commitments as they come in. Without further ado, let's start with one, I think arguably the biggest position of concern for LSU. That's in the back end of this defense, specifically the safeties. Look, you just didn't have good enough players. I don't know if there's a better way to describe it. I trust Blake Baker. I trust the player development. I trust the defensive scheme he wants to run. There's a reason Brian Kelly went out and paid all that money for a guy like Coach Baker, but you need better players. And you look at Zachariah Poyser, this kid is one of those exactly what you're looking for if you're LSU. One is the versatility that he brings. Can play that free safety spot, cover one, center field safety. He can play the nickel. He can play as a box safety. He's 6'2", 190. He's got a nice frame to give you that run support. Now, I personally kind of quickly buzzing the Jack State stuff from him. I like him at nickel the best because he's a guy that is really, really good in coverage. You take a look at some of the numbers, 69 targets faced in 2024. He only gave up 33 catches. That's a 47.8% completion percentage for him at that nickel spot. That's an exceptionally good number. And then you look at him as a tackler, only a 13% missed tackle rate, which is another really important part. When you're playing that nickel corner spot, you got to be able to cover. You got to be able to give run support, got to tackle in space. This kid can do it all. And I think most importantly, he's shown he can play at a high level at the college football level. Now, it's a big jump from Jacksonville State to the SEC. These are the guys that have historically worked out in the portal. You know, there's a lot of times schools like to go back to the high school recruiting rank and say, hey, give me the guys with potential that haven't necessarily been good football players. Look, at a certain point, maybe we just missed on the high school eval and they're not that good. And then you have guys like Zachariah Poyser who were not recruited out of high school very heavily, but have shown they can play at a high level. Versatility, played over 700 snaps, so he has that experience. He tackles well. Those are the boxes that we're trying to check if you're LSU, especially in the back end of this defense. Another defensive back that I think is really intriguing. And now you could say, Jay, you just talked about highly recruited guys out of high school that haven't played much football. I think Jakeem Jackson is kind of a different story. He's not a bust. You know, he started for Florida the first 2 weeks of the season and then got hurt. And I look at Jakeem Jackson and say he's only going into year 3, which that's kind of the last year where you can look back at the high school recruiting rankings and looking at the potential and the traits and say, hey, it might come together. You can't go wrong adding a guy like Jakeem Jackson into that cornerback room. He's 6'1". He's almost 200 pounds, runs a 10.9 coming out of high school, length, size. Those are the physical boxes that we're trying to check at the cornerback spot. And again, has started for the Florida Gators until that injury. So he's one of those guys that, yeah, he's a highly recruited dude that's going into year 3 that hasn't played a ton of football, but there's a little bit more nuance to that conversation. And at the end of the day, like, just continue to feed Blake Baker, like, talented defensive backs. I think he's going to make the best out of that room. And then you kind of look at DJ Pickett coming in as a 5-star, a unicorn, quite frankly, as a true freshman. I'd be surprised if DJ Pickett doesn't find somewhere to play in the back end early as a true freshman. Next position, I think LSU will be looking to address the tight end spot. look, wide receiver, tight end, those are positions LSU wants to address. This is a good transfer portal cycle to want to address those positions because I think those two position groups are absolutely loaded. Now, the conversation here is around Trey'Dez Green. I want LSU to add a true kind of inline tight end that can do it all. That so you can allow Trey'Dez Green to continue to be that versatile freak show pass catcher. I don't know if Trey'Dez Green will ever be the best inline blocking tight end, but he's going to be dynamite as a pass catcher, especially in the red zone. If you land a guy like Luke Haas or another tight end we're going to talk about, it allows you to be flexible with Trey'Dez Green, who I think is only going to get better as he matures and as he, because Trey'Dez Green coming out of high school is like a basketball player. I think there's going to be a pretty steep development arc for Trey'Dez Green. Very high on that kid in 2025. Now, Luke Haas, to me, by far my favorite tight end that's available. You look at Luke Haas and say, was well on his way to being a true freshman All-American in 2023, got hurt, just didn't get involved in the Arkansas offense in 2024, hasn't dropped the football since he's been playing at the collegiate level, an 85% completion percentage when he's targeted. You look at the one thing we're looking for at tight end, it's, hey, are you reliable? When the quarterback's going to you, are you catching the football, moving the chains, catching touchdowns? That's what you want in a tight end. That's what Luke Haas gives you. He's a spirited run blocker, whether it's on the perimeter, whether it's in line. I think most of all, he's a crafty tight end that knows how to find separation and find space. This, to me, is the exact replacement you might be looking for a guy like Mason Taylor. Another one that I really like is Bauer Sharp. The Oklahoma fans don't like Bauer Sharp. At the end of the day, you look at Bauer Sharp, said, led this Oklahoma offense in targets, led them in receiving yards, led them in receptions. Bauer Sharp was the guy in that Oklahoma offense. And yes, did he have a few drops? Is he still developing as a tight end? Yes, because the background on Bauer Sharp was an FCS quarterback before he made the transition to tight end. So I think Bauer Sharp, was pretty damn solid for Oklahoma in 2024 when there was not a lot of help around him. I think just as importantly, he's still developing as a tight end. Yeah, he's a little bit of an older guy, but he's kind of new to the position. And so whether it's Luke Haas, who I'd probably prefer because he's that ready-made tight end that we feel damn confident about, Bauer Sharp gives you some upside that I don't think is appreciated enough with him, because you look at him and say he's been around a decent amount, but he's still learning that tight end position. So whether it's Luke Haas, whether it's Bauer Sharp, would love to see LSU get one of those two. The wide receiver position, certainly you got to replace a lot of production. It sounds like LSU has found their top target, so to speak. That's Barry Brown. Me and Brian Kelly are on the same wavelength there. Barry Brown is my favorite wide receiver in the portal because he can do it all. 6'1", $180, can win vertically down the field. We talk about track times, and I think we've talked about Barry Brown in the past, a 10.49 and the 100-meter dash, but that speed clearly translates onto the football field in the SEC conference. And so you look at Barry Brown and say he's that guy that we know Joe Sloan wants to be speed in space. Like, we're just going to get our playmakers to football in space, let them do the rest. I would argue that was something LSU was missing. Barry Brown is that guy that when you get him the football, it's hold your breath because he might go 80 yards for a touchdown. Someone like Malik Neighbors in 2023 didn't get enough credit for how good he was after the catch. I don't think, outside of maybe a guy like Aaron Anderson, how many guys on LSU were you holding your breath with when they had the football in their hands? Barry Brown, to me, is that kind of guy. Elite wide receiver, really good fit in this LSU offense. The last position I want to talk about in a player that has emerged, Will Help. Couple things I love about him. One, proving commodity at the Power 4 level. Started every single game for Purdue, played 726 snaps as an edge rusher. That's a ton of football. That tells me Purdue valued this kid a lot because that is a lot of snaps for a defensive lineman to play. Number two, he's only going into year 3. And so you look at Will Hell and say, all right, he was a very, very good football player year 2 for Purdue in the Big Ten. He might be getting better going into year 3, which is a different story from a lot of these defensive linemen we're trying to get out of the portal where they might be a 5th or 6th year senior. Look, the 5th and 6th year seniors rarely take a massive jump in the right direction. Year 3 defensive linemen, oftentimes do. So not only are you getting a proven commodity, but you're also getting a lot of upside. And what I like about Will Held is he doesn't light up the box score in the sack department, dog against the run. And that's something that matters. You want to create sacks, win on first and second down, force teams into those third and long situations where you can let your pass rushers pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. Will Held will let you do that. He's not a bad pass rusher by any means. 26 run stops. He's a hammer in the run. And I think that's what LSU's looking for. It wouldn't be the flashiest land, but this would be a damn good one for LSU in the transfer portal. We'll continue to update the list as we get more names that LSU's going after. It's going to be fun. Again, appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.